We have about 50 employees that are working at one given time. I have an employee, there was a disconnection about 6 weeks ago between him and I. At first, it wasn't as big of a deal, but now it's becoming a very large issue because we're not on speaking terms. And this makes it very, very difficult as a manager to do my job, is my dilemma. I can only imagine, based on the process that I've gone through, I can only imagine and empathize how difficult it is for him as well. It becomes really unfortunate because here it is, he's such a big asset. Most companies, especially for service business, the biggest asset we have are our employees. You have such a bad disconnection and you feel like you're losing a great employee. It becomes a double negative.
Well, tell me what happened 6 weeks ago.
Him and another employee, Charlie, got into it. He felt like Charlie wasn't working and Charlie was avoiding the work, and that was putting a lot more work on him. Then Charlie left for about an hour and came back with food for a lot of the people, which appeared to be everybody but Glenn. He got very upset. It was such a heated conversation that they almost came to physical confrontation. I wasn't there at the time. There was another manager that was running the back and I was running the front of the house. Glenn went to that other manager and explained to him what the situation was. And his take on it was that Charlie wasn't working, nobody else is working, he's the only one working, and David sent Charlie to go out and get David food. And that was not the case. I never sent anybody to leave the building to get me any food. And I'm also vegan, so I definitely don't send anybody to get me my own food. But that caused a very big disconnection, I feel, between Glenn and I, not only because of his assumptions, but also because he reported me to another manager.
So can you look at the list of raw spots and emotions? Tell me, what are some of the raw spots that hit you in that moment?
Not being valued or appreciated for your work skills or performance. When someone turns away from you, criticizing or making jokes about something that's fundamental to who you are. Number 9, dislikes or views you negatively.
I can feel that it was very hurtful to you.
It's difficult to put this into words because for so many years I've been trained that emotions have no place in the workplace, yet obviously it was emotional triggers for me.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to read it and then think about it, because as I'm saying it, it's almost like, well, no, it wasn't really that big of a deal, but it was, and it is, and it's becoming a much more big deal than the initial incident.
It makes sense because from the initial incident, the disconnect caused more disconnect happen. You're stuck in a negative cycle a little bit.
Yeah.
And the cycle is taking over your relationship. As you look through the list of emotions, and please start from the top, if you can name me the surface emotions, the softer emotions, and then the primary emotions that came up for you in that moment.
I would say resentful, disappointed, betrayed, and confused. I put a great deal of value in the people that work with me, and I really take pride in that, and I take a lot of responsibility. So when this incident happened, it really shook me.
What about softer emotions?
Let down, unimportant, not valued.
Would you say hurt?
Yeah, I would say hurt too.
What's some of the emotions you feel right now as you talk about it?
At times I feel embarrassed because I feel when I approach other transporters and he's around, I just sense that things are being said about me.
I hear you.
Primary emotions, I feel sad and surprise.
What was happening for you? If you would draw an image about you.
It would look like me frozen at the helm, because I have to assess like what's going on, what's happening, why is this happening? I'm very confused because everybody has a bad day. So, sometimes you get into a fight with a coworker and it has nothing to do with the manager, and the manager thinks everything is fine. And in fact, that coworker is disconnected. I have no idea that he's disconnected specifically with me, and it's directed at me. It's very confusing and very difficult to assess.
What was your worst fear about yourself in that moment?
I have failed.
I have failed. You help me. I have failed what?
I have failed creating safety for my employees.
It takes a lot of courage, David, to recognize, to even talk about your fears. So I really appreciate you sharing that with me. What's your worst fear about Glenn in that moment as pertains to you?
Yeah, he doesn't have confidence in me.
What's your fear about your relationship with Glenn?
I definitely think it's going to end.
What was your automatic thought?
How dare
How
he?
dare, yeah. What were your protective behaviors?
I avoid. I feel like if I was going to talk with him, it would go to a disciplinary action. I thought that this was just I'll give him space type thing. Now it's way beyond that.
I hear you. So you wanted to give him a chance to come to you.
Or move forward. He has not done that. He's
Right.
held on to it, and it's caused other reactions from him.
You're both kind of struggling because you are so important to him.
Yeah.
And he's very important to you.
Yes.
If Glenn would be here, what do you need to feel safe and connected?
That I matter and I'm important. How embarrassing it must have been for me.
If you would hear that from Glenn, David, you're important to me, you matter to me, that I do acknowledge that it was embarrassing for you. How would it feel for you?
Confident, satisfied and relieved and valued.
Satisfied, relieved, and valued. If you would feel valued, confident, satisfied, relieved, and valued, what can you do with Glenn?
Help to represent his point of view in regards to the other employees. He feels that there's an immaturity in his department and it's not being addressed.
So you're saying that when I feel confident, satisfied, relieved, and valued, I'm able to attend to his need and to be able to see what is the difficulties he's having in his department. Am I getting this?
Yes.
And I want you to know I really appreciate for you to being so open and honest. It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Thank you.
And also it takes a lot of care. I almost feel like you're really saying that I want to be a better manager. I want to know how to reconnect with my employee because he's so important to me.
Yes. And even as I'm looking at myself in the Zoom call that we're on right now, I can see, because there's a stressed look that I have. And this right here, as I'm talking about it, was not there when we started the conversation.
Right.
So I can actually physically see myself in distress over this, which is shocking because there was parts of this conversation where I was very dismissive of my feelings. But it's very apparent that I'm stressed out about it because I feel the weight here. I can feel it. I've been working on paying attention to my facial expressions because my feelings are different than the way people interpret how I'm looking, my looks. I'm feeling distressed and people are looking at that distress and seeing anger. They're not seeing distress. And this is, something that made it very ineffective in relationships in general. So I'm sure if people were walking by the door right now and they saw me, they're not going to knock.
Because
maybe now that I'm smiling, but when we were talking about it, my expressions were very, very serious.
Very serious. And inside you felt very sad. You felt sad for the loss of connection with one of your employees who you, first of all, you like very much, who is a hard worker, who is a great asset to your company. And also he didn't feel safe to come to you. And I think this is very disturbing for you because you're really, really working so hard to create safety for your employees.
Yes, I would be open to a reconnection session with him. So I would approach him and I would ask him about exactly what we just went through.